with the restaurant industry, you are on 24/7. Like every time you walk in that door, it's a smile, and sometimes that's hard, to always have that smile on. But remembering to, boost yourself up on your way in and make sure that you do have a smile, and, crank the music up before you walk in, as you're driving into work. Like those, to me, that's sort of that leadership. Get out of your head, because you need to be present, and you need to be there.
Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We're joined today by Stephanie Jaeger, the president of Les Dames d'Escoffier International, also known as LDEI. Stephanie, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. As always, I love to understand what got people into this space, right? Hospitality space is such an interesting space. So I'd love to hear what got you into the hospitality space in the first place.
I was actually quite young, 14 years old, and I was instructed by an older sibling that it was time for me to start earning my keep. And for some reason, I believed her. So here I am, applying for a serving assistant position at a restaurant. It turned out that it was a restaurant that she and her friends had hung out at and thought that maybe they could use a little bit of help. So she thought I was qualified for that. But once I was in the door, I was kind of hooked, and I won't say exactly how many years later, but quite a few. I'm still involved and loving every day.
That's awesome. Was there a specific moment or defining moment that maybe sparked that passion? Because a lot of people I speak to start off with the story of maybe having worked there, whatever, but there's usually like a turning point where it's like, oh, I can see myself more than just like making some side cash or extra cash, and see it more as a career. So curious, any defining moments that kind of sparked it for you?
I think I had a few customers that were really, as I sort of obviously got better at the trade as a server, who, sort of pointed out, like, you really seem to know what you're doing and seem to really like this. And I did. I liked, going in for those crazy shifts, and, Friday nights running till I was ragged, but at the end of the day, being like, this is that rush I definitely enjoyed for sure. And then I had an opportunity to open my own restaurant with my partner and we ran that for 25 years.
Wow,
so it was kind of, it wasn't necessarily an aha moment, but it was definitely a, okay, here we go moment.
Okay, interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. 25 years. Tell me more about the concept. What was it? Restaurant, bar, a bit of both? Like, tell me about it, how it started, what it was. And
to be honest, I think it started as a little bit of a hole in the wall.
Okay.
It was mom and pop shop for sure. I ran the front of house. He ran the back of house.
Okay.
It was fine dining. From what he was trained, he was a fine dining chef.
Got it.
Had worked all over the world. So came back we're based in Vancouver.
Okay.
Came back to Vancouver and said, I don't want to do big business anymore. I want to run my own. I want to be able to touch everything.
Yeah.
And again, came to me and said, I really like what you do. I know you interact well with people and customers. So, do you want to try this? And so, yeah.
That's really cool.
And, we were fortunate enough to be successful. We were in part of Canada's top 100. Maclean Magazine, some of our local papers certainly gave us some accolades, which was phenomenal.
That's cool.
And from there, we just kind of built our business.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Really cool. And we'll definitely get more into, LDEI in a sec, but I kind of like going through the timeline. And so just kind of going a little deeper on that restaurant.
I'm aging myself.
No, this is great. This is great. 25 years experience. I love it. I had someone on the podcast. We pre-record them, so I had him on 2 days ago. 40 years in the hospitality space, so it's awesome to meet people all walks of life. But no, really, the idea is we have a lot of restaurant operators / owners that listen in. So we try to get guests on from really anything from. It could be marketing experts, it could be ops type experts. Sometimes it's just tech companies related to the space. So have them on. So really one of the goals with this podcast is to understand people's story, their passion, and then just even learnings, right? Because it's always great to learn from your own mistakes, but it's even better to learn from other people's mistakes sometimes. And so, 25 years running restaurant, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons. Can you highlight a few that maybe come to mind? I know it's hard because it's such a big gap. 25 years is a long time, but any key lessons or moments that you think our listeners can take advantage of?
Well, I think one of the things that maybe being a little bit young and naive when we first started is accepting help and realizing that we didn't have to do it all on our own. I think we took a lot on at the beginning, and sort of maturity made us realize that we could actually ask for help.
Right.
Hiring people, you didn't have to wear all of the hats. You could sort of share the responsibility. Which is definitely something I take in now, working with Joy Restaurant Group, being able to sort of share that knowledge that, working as a team is so much more impactful, and really so much more rewarding.
Yeah.
And being able to share your knowledge and your experiences and,
Yeah.
Kind of aspect.
No, it makes a ton of sense. And to be honest, what you're saying actually strikes a chord, because I think it's something I've heard from many operators where it's like, they don't ask for help. And it could be true for entrepreneurs in general, but I do find restaurateurs specifically, they just try to figure it all out on their own, when it's like, you can ask, don't be shy. Like, how do you handle this? How do you create processes? How do you, I'm having issues, or, and I find restaurateurs do a pretty decent job when it comes to implementing tech. That's one area where like they'll quickly talk to their peers, like, hey, I'm using this POS. What do you guys think? Or like, hey, I'm shopping around. What POS do you guys use? Do you guys like it? Like, what are you using for inventory? You guys like it? Like, this Angelo guy tried to sell me on Whisk. Is it good? But beyond that, you're right. I do see people kind of just trying to figure it out. And sometimes you have to realize it's like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. People have done this before. Of course, you're going to have your unique spin, but like, you're not the first person to have staff turnover. You're not the first person that has to count inventory. Yeah. You're not the first person that has to cook under pressure. Like, whatever it is in the restaurant, it's like someone's done it. So like, don't be shy. Looking back though, like I'd love to maybe touch on this, because just to be clear, when you say partner, business partner or partner?
All of the above.
Okay. I want that because I don't want it was just business, but that's what I understood. But the reason go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we actually started up just as business partners, but we did end up we actually got married 2 years after opening the restaurant.
Okay.
So we knew it was possible.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. I guess if you can run a restaurant together, you can run a marriage together. Maybe there's a lesson there.
Exactly.
Nice little snippet, run a restaurant together, run a marriage together. No, what I was going to ask, the reason I wanted to just clarify is what came to mind is you're obviously not the only one, right? There's other people who are dating or married to their partner. I'm sure that comes with challenges, with pros and cons. Love to hear. Like, let's dive in a bit. Like, what was the good? What was the bad? Any tips for people who are listening who are like, oh my God, I work with my husband or I work with my wife? Love to hear it directly from you.
Well, I think for me, one of the biggest things, I was, obviously good with the relationship, but when I was sort of like almost right after the wedding, it was like, wait a second, these things aren't, like he's leaving the toilet seat up. When did that start happening? Or, all those little marriage things that you think.
Towel on the floor. Towel on the floor is a key one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought these things, once we were married, these things were going to sort of clear themselves up magically. So we learned very early on that communication was key.
Yeah.
Talking about it was key, but also home was home and work was work. And that became really important for us, especially as sort of newlyweds.
Right.
And learning sort of the relationship at home, but making sure that I felt very overwhelmed with sort of, being home and kind of trying to figure out how to deal with telling him that you have to pick up that towel. But at the same time, he's telling me, that one of my servers needs to be, addressed for doing so-and-so today. And I finally said like, nope, that's it. Home is home and work is work. And that's it. And it saved our marriage.
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. And it's great advice. And I've heard that before. I'm trying to, separate, work and play, so to speak. But the idea makes sense. But implementation wise, how do you do it? Because I'm sure there's days where like something happened at work and you're just like, oh, I gotta, I need to, but it's like, you're home. Like, how do you go with like balancing the theory? Because in theory, yes, work is right. But then in reality, you're out for dinner with your husband and you're thinking about that issue at the, it's like, how do you balance, kind of separating the two, I guess?
It totally came down to communication. Absolutely. We owned a business that, really was almost 24/7. Even though we tried not to be in the building 24/7, it was still there.
Right.
And it was a matter of communicating. It was like, look, it was almost like scheduling a meeting.
Okay.
I know we're at home, but I need to talk about work.
Okay. That's
and
fair.
Are you prepared for that right now? Or do you want to wait 20 minutes and do it?
Got it.
Is it, let's talk about it after dinner when we get home. Like, it was just opening up that communication and being aware that you had to ask that question.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to be honest, I think communication, as cliche as it sounds, it's just true for partnerships, period, not just relationships, but like business partners. And Whisk, we were part of like this accelerator back in the day called Techstars. And one of the things we learned from Techstars, because they, deal with literally thousands of tech companies around the world, whatever, and they have different kind of accelerators all over the world. But talks they had as you kind of go through this accelerator process is about startup failure, which, similar to restaurant failures, more startups fail, most restaurants fail. But the biggest reason, and this is where I'm tying the whole point together, was actually just founder breakup. So like communication, it was like co-founders who are misaligned, they're not happy, they're not. So it was interesting. It wasn't lack of funding, it wasn't product market fit. Like those things happen, but it ended up being founder breakup. So it's like definitely, I think that translates probably to most businesses. So great takeaway.
The restaurant industry is tough too.
Very tough.
I think there's sort of this romance that, it's all fun and, drinks and, great food, and it's so much fun. And I think there are definitely some people that go into it kind of thinking like as best friends, that this is going to be such a great lifestyle and it's going to be so much fun. Yes. And so that also takes its toll on a relationship. And again, if you're not talking about that, or you're not talking about the fact that you're exhausted or you're, whatever it is you're feeling, I think it really impacts it.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add to that too, just to tie it back to LDEI, I was able to join pretty early on the organization. And one of our big things is sort of that mentorship and networking ability. So I was able to sit down at a table with some pretty amazing women that had kind of, been there before me, and just to be able to have that one-on-one conversation with women that were similar, or like we said earlier, going through similar experiences or having, divorce is pretty high in the restaurant business, even if you're not working in the same building. So that was an amazing opportunity and something that really kept me stuck. Just made sure I stayed with LDEI.
Yeah. And speaking of which, like, I know if we'll definitely jump into the LDI, but I did have, if I'm reading right, so like obviously I was researching before and kind of looking at your trajectory and what you've been up to and whatnot, and I believe you transitioned basically to a learning and development specialist. I'd love to maybe touch on that, and then let's dive into LDI, which I know is the crux of what you do today. But just to maybe finish the kind of timeline, I'd love to just hear like what does that mean? Like, talk to me about like the learning and development specialist. What does that mean? What did you do? Because we know it's a core part of restaurants, but I'd love to hear kind of what that meant.
We did end up closing our restaurant in 2021. Okay. And I was fortunate enough, Joy Restaurant Group approached me and said, it was a little bit, we're not sure what we want you to do, but we really want you to be part of us or with us. Yeah. Getting on in my age, I wasn't super excited about staying on the floor, managing a restaurant, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
So standing all day. I think people that don't stand all day don't know how much it hurts your lower back.
And being on all day, having to have that conversation all day, and the smile and the, welcoming everybody into your home, which is how it feels like to me. Like I'm always inviting somebody into my home, and I had the great opportunity of getting to share my husband's wonderful food with them, so that also helped keep the smile on the face. But it's a long day. So I was able to meet with the people and culture team and kind of jumped full steam in, both feet. Started working on. Joey is rapidly expanding into the United States.
Yeah.
We are a Canadian-based company. And I was able to sort of use my knowledge, what they have done in their training so far. And we're kind of, making it a bit more succinct as we go into the American market, and making sure that we are training everything consistently is sort of the key right now.
Interesting.
And yeah, I mean, we've always taken the approach that every restaurant is sort of the managers, like it's your business is sort of one of our internal sayings.
Okay.
Because you take responsibility for it. The name Joey's on the door, but it should feel like yours. That being said, we do want to keep everything consistent as well. So that's my responsibility, is kind of rating everybody in and making sure we're training consistently.
Yeah, they actually opened one not far from me. I live in Miami. There's one in Aventura, like maybe 20 minutes north of me. So that's how many Joey's are there? I know they're pretty big. How many locations are there these days? Because I know they've been expanding, but curious.
Yeah, I think the total, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I think the total count is about 40 now.
Okay, wow.
Across North America. We do have a sister restaurant, local public eatery.
Okay.
We have about 15 of those.
Is that mainly Vancouver, because I haven't heard of that one, or is that mainly Canadian, or where are those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. We actually just opened our second American store in Houston.
Oh, cool.
Excuse me. Sorry. We actually just opened in Dallas. We're about to open in Houston.
Got it. Okay, very neat. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm going to look into the sister restaurant. That's pretty neat. And like that's super cool, because I saw them open, and it's funny. That's a thought I had. I was like, I could have sworn they were a Canadian company, but it's cool to see a Canadian brand expanding like that. So that's awesome. I'll have to definitely check it out. But changing gears, I want to get into LDEI, Les Dames d'Escoffier International. As the president, tell me a bit about what, number one, for people that don't know, because I'll be honest, I didn't know until I Googled it. So let's start with, what is it? What is LDEI? Let's start there.
It is a philanthropic organization, nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization that support women in the culinary, hospitality, food and beverage, all sides.
Yeah.
That's kind of our goal, is to mentorship, and predominantly through scholarships.
Okay.
We help women in their industry.
Okay. Very cool. And then I know mentorship is a big part of it. I'd love to maybe chat a bit about that. Any success, and I always hate asking for success stories, because it's like, sometimes it's like, tell me a funny joke. It's hard to think of one on the spot, but if there's any recent ones that come to mind, I'd love to maybe share, or give you the opportunity to share a success story of maybe where mentorship really kind of led to some really cool outcomes.
I can honestly pick one. We do have 40 chapters across North America.
Okay, wow.
Including, we have a chapter in London. We have a chapter in Mexico. We have just opened a chapter in Italy.
Okay, wow.
Each chapter, each chapter ranges in size from about 20 people. Our New York chapter, I think, is pushing 300 now.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm going to get an email from Jill, the president there, saying, hang on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so Carol Brock, who was the founder of LDEI 37 years ago now, it's all mentorship. For me personally, like I've already said, like sitting at that table the first time was probably the scariest and most exciting opportunity I've ever had in my life, because these are some women that I've, always looked up to in our industry. And here I am just, sharing a glass of wine and talking shop, but cool. in a positive way. To me, I think what I see in the LDEI, that is the mentorship. That is the ability to just sit in a room and talk.
Yeah.
But again, with so many women involved, they touch other women and that that didn't sound quite right.
No, I get it.
They support other women, every day. And that's their goal. That's what they want to be doing. We want to make sure that women are going into kitchens feeling comfortable. And if they're not feeling comfortable, why? And having somebody that they can communicate with
That's really cool.
And just being able to be that support.
That's really cool. And so for maybe our restaurant operators or managers or owners listening in, specifically the female ones listening in that are like, this sounds interesting. Walk us through like their point of view. Like, I'm a woman. I'm a woman. I'm interested. This sounds interesting. What happens? Do I go on a website? Do I sign up? Do I show up to a chapter? Like, let's go through like maybe their journey to just paint the picture.
All of those things.
Okay.
The easiest way is probably to go to our website, LDEI.org.
Okay.
It has a list of all of the places that we do have chapters. So a list of all of our 40 chapters.
Okay.
And there's a link there that you can click into for your region. And the requirements are that you do need to have 5 years minimum in management.
Okay.
The logic behind that is that we do want mentors, and we want to be able to support students. All of our chapters do scholarships and or grants of some kind. So having a student as a member what we'd like to do is have that student become a manager and then them and join us at that point. So we'd like to be able to have them continue to receive our support as opposed to be giving it in an early stage of their career.
Got it. And so they go to LDEI.org, they find the chapter closest to them. And then what is it a kind of somewhat standardized process where like each chapter has X amount of meetings a month, or like what does that kind of side look like? Like what happens once you join?
I think it's definitely up to the chapter themselves. Okay. LDEI, as we call it, sort of the international, is sort of the umbrella that looks over all of the chapters, but each chapter is individual. Again, having 20 members versus having 200 members, you're going to change your format a little bit. All chapters do try and have in-person events so that you are having that in-reach opportunity, that opportunity to network with your peers. But then we have fundraisers where, you're getting your hands dirty and you're getting in there and you're raising money for scholarships or you're raising money for grants. One of our chapters, San Antonio, has done an amazing job. They do 1 year of scholarships, and the next year they do aspirational grants where they're providing women who already have businesses that are struggling to get to the next level.
Got it.
And I shouldn't say struggling, but they need that help, that little lift. To get to the next level. So they're providing, funds to help that. Okay. Whereas in the opposite year, they're doing scholarships where it's, they're providing women the opportunity to get their WSET or get their, the next level of culinary, whatever it may look like.
Very neat. Cool. I mean, it sounds super interesting. I mean, definitely post podcast, I'd love to connect with you and chat if there's a way WIS can somehow support. I mean, we're on the tech side, but we work with a lot of bar managers or owners, and on the food side, a lot of chefs or kitchen managers, and help with mostly back of house stuff, but all the boring but important stuff. So inventory, costing,
that recipes. We can't survive without it.
Exactly. Exactly. Super necessary, but like super tedious and the worst thing ever. Which sometimes I joke around, but it's one of the reasons I think people we're talking about this, but it's. The entry to a restaurant is like you said, a lot of times it's two friends, you're having a drink, you're like, we could do this. And then they get into it and it's like, damn, I didn't realize it was all this accounting and bookkeeping and P&L stuff. And
all these numbers.
Yeah. Yes. It's like so number oriented. And then you realize, oh man, like, and I think that's probably part of the reason there's such a high failure rate is because like the barrier to entry is like somewhat low in the sense that like, sure, anyone can open a restaurant, so to speak. Yes, you need some capital, et cetera, but like the barrier is low. And it's one of those things that people experience because you're going to restaurants. So like you feel like you can do it. It's not like you're in other industries, you're not really experiencing the thing. It's not like you're like experiencing a tech company. You're like, I could do this. So it's like, there's something interesting about that where it's like a lot of people think it looks easy. It's like almost seductive. It's like, this is cool. I'd like to work in the industry. Like, this is fun. And then you kind of get into it and you're like, it was much more fun on that other side. I was much happier as a guest sipping a bit of wine. I'm not loving this side.
Long days for sure.
Long days, long hours, like said, tight margins. I feel like restaurants sometimes are just the. I've said this in other episodes, so for people to say it might sound like I'm a broken record, but I always joke around like restaurateurs in a way are like, entrepreneurs of entrepreneurs. Not to say like, oh, it's harder to have a restaurant than to, I don't know, build the crazy tech company. But in a sense, it's just for a restaurant, just there's so like it touches everything. So in terms of like a lesson or a class, a restaurant is like amazing business class because it's back of house, front of house, the legal stuff. I don't know, freaking leases, hiring, firing, staff training, process, like just perishable items, inventory. Like you touch so many parts of like business in one small building that it's like kind of in a weird way, a good, a very good intro to business because you end up like literally having to do a bit of everything, right? So I'm curious, like
100%.
how do you think about that? Like for people starting off, because obviously being around 25 years, no easy feat. Like, how do you kind of recommend people transition from wearing all these hats to then, trying to delegate them? Like, what did that look like for you guys?
I don't know if I can answer that question. It's a lot of trial and error, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It was the opportunity that we had some, servers or even some chefs or cooks that came into the kitchen that were they wanted to take that next step. And it was kind of like, hey, I can take this on. And sort of realizing that, you didn't have to have this tight grip on everything. And that, again, being able to share that responsibility and that pressure that it took off,
Right.
People always said to me, so you were the hostess. Well, I was the hostess. I was the bookkeeper. I was the sommelier. I was I had 101 hats. And,
right.
And I think being the restaurant owner, sometimes I had a great somm that stood beside me and, could work the room. And sometimes they weren't available or they, decided to move on. So that I took that hat back on. But then I had a bartender that was, killing in it. So I didn't have to wear that hat. So
That's cool.
There's definitely opportunities. But yeah, again, I think it's just being able to work as a team and accepting that others can do it as well.
Yeah. And I think a big part of it is what you do today, which is the training aspect, right? The training, the learning, because I was talking to Greg from Craveworthy Brands, and he said it wonderfully. He was just talking about building your bench. He's like, you got to build your bench because you want to promote from within. So it's like it's super important that you're kind of training, and growing people, and that's fine. And we kind of spoke about how like sometimes people are scared to train too much or invest because what if they leave, and then there's that a whole quote is like, well, what if they stay? What if you don't train them and they stay? So it's like,
yes, exactly.
So it goes
100%.
Right. So I'd love to know from you, right? Because this is something you do on the regular. For restaurateurs listening, you obviously have a wealth of experience, not only running a restaurant, 25 years, but on the Joey side, on the learning, the training. How do you think about, or how do you recommend people think about these things, and how can maybe they implement some type of learning / training in their restaurants that are maybe not as big as a Joey's?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that, again, going back to restaurants and their uniqueness, the size makes such a difference on how you would really train. I think my biggest thing or my recommendation is literally to step back, like almost zoom out and look at it from almost an outsider's perspective. What are your staff talking? What bad habits have they picked up? What bad habits are they teaching new staff? Are you present when new staff is being trained, or are you just throwing them on the floor? I think that's a really typical thing too, because of costs, right? So you hire a new staff member and you throw them on the floor and, cross your fingers that they survive. And what we've noticed right recently with the Joey Restaurant Group is that sort of taking that extra time to actually get them prepared to be on the floor. And, learning the food items, learning the cocktails, and having that confidence, the server having the confidence when they step on the floor, the whole image changes. The second the server is more comfortable, then the customer's happier because the server's not worrying like that, they're so in their head that they can't focus on what the customer's even asking.
Yes, it's so true. And like, even just as a patron, like I've experienced it, right? Like when a server is confident, you just trust them more. Like, oh no, I would go with this. It's one of our most popular, and you're like, all right, fine, I'll do that. Or like
Yeah.
upselling me on a wine, and like, this is great, but if you really want to pair something with, all right, I trust you. Like, but it's in the delivery, right? It's like the big part of that's, well, the knowledge and the delivery. And it's interesting though how it could definitely like have such a big impact. People don't realize, but that training, whether it's like server average check size or upselling something or tables ordering dessert or ordering drinks or not ordering drinks, like all these things add up, and that training is where it comes from. Like, why is person X average ticket size, this, and person Y average ticket size is much higher? And the answer, or a big part of the answer, is in the training, in the way they were trained, right?
Yeah, and usually, it's confidence, and that comes from training.
Yeah,
I think.
There you go.
Sure.
Love it. And then, kind of switching gears, obviously, just having so much experience in the industry, I'd love to know, what do you think makes a great leader in the hospitality space?
Wow, I feel like I just got put on the spot. What makes a great leader?
Yeah.
Communication.
Yeah.
Being able to communicate. Being able to accept. I don't want to say criticism, but criticism. Knowing that you're not perfect, and that sometimes you need to take a learning. And I think too, with the restaurant industry, you are on 24/7. Like every time you walk in that door, it's a smile. And sometimes that's hard,
yes.
To always have that smile on. But remembering to, boost yourself up on your way in and make sure that you do have a smile, and, crank the music up before you walk in, as you're driving into work.
Yeah.
Like those, to me, that's sort of that leadership. Get out of your head, because you need to be present, and you need to be there.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It makes a ton of sense, because it's you as a leader, you're doing that thing every day, but you got to remember, like, your guests might be saving up and coming up for that one time a month or special birthday or whatever. So it's like, trying to remind yourself of also that it's like, yeah, this is just another Tuesday for you, and it's just a shift. But maybe for that family sitting there, it's like they saved up for that birthday, and it's like, you can make or break their experience, right? Like you can,
100%.
Which is crazy, but it's super interesting.
And you as a leader, you can make or break that server.
Exactly.
Like if your server is frustrated, or, upset with something that you've said, and now they're going to the customer, well, everything's just changed for everybody in the room, right? So
Yeah. Cool. As we kind of start wrapping up, one question I always like to just get a sense of, so I can look back at these, as just tech just keeps getting crazier, and AI and everything's automated and robots. Love to hear, what are some interesting kind of tech trends that, if any, that you find interesting, whether it's just personally, or whether it's because of Joey's group, whatever it is, LDEI, but like, what are some trends that you're seeing or things you're excited about in that space?
I don't know that it's fair that I answer that question. I am a bit naive when it does come to the sort of the tech side.
Okay,
obviously with Joey Restaurant Group, we are using obviously iPads and everything for ringing in all of our orders. So we have started to focus on using those as for our training material.
Nice.
When we have training groups,
nice.
They're using Articulate. So
cool.
Which is great. And I think it's that side of it's fun.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I use ChatGPT probably every day.
That's great.
Just to kind of make sure that what I'm saying is maybe clearer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, honestly, there's so much to do with ChatGPT. Like even just little things. Like one thing I use it for as an example is sometimes like a discussion. Like if I'm thinking of something or I want to pitch this thing, it's like just conversation. If I was pitching this, find holes in my presentation. Where would you? Oh, that's it. Like it's great to get that initial round of feedback and then take that But yeah, there's a million and one use cases. But no, I'm always interested because it's cool to hear people's perspectives. I've had people on that are loving the robotic side, and Chipotle with their avocado slicer, auto robot, and this bartending robot thing, and like whatever. And then people that are more interested in the back of house tech that's coming up. People interested in kind of the self-serve stuff. So just like, I don't know, drone delivery. So it's always interesting, but there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just always curious to see how people are kind of thinking about it and where they see things going.
Well, I think in terms of learning and development and front of house,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously from my background of fine dining, Joy Restaurant Group, that's a bit more, premium casual.
Yeah.
It's still human. You need that human touch for sure. But from the learning and development side, I think there's a lot of things that can and will be really useful using the tech moving forward. So I need to get caught up for sure. And any suggestions I would happily take.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think it's such an amazing, the opportunities are endless, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, in a weird way, like, and I've said this before, it's what I think will also happen is as more and more, let's say, QSRs or fast casual, et cetera, are, everything's tech, self-serve kiosk. And there's pros and cons, whatever, but generally it's like less and less and less human. I do think like places like a Joey, whether it's, premium casual or even just like fine dining, whatever, there'll be that more in demand in a way, because it's going to be so rare to have that host and a server and that somebody come to your table. So it's like, and that bartender that, so it's like those things will probably even become more exclusive. That's my take. I could be wrong. I'll look back on this episode in 2 years and be like, whoa, I was way wrong. People prefer robot bartenders. But my take is like, there's going to be obviously so much more tech. Yeah, there's going to be so much more tech, but in a weird way, I think it's going to help the kind of more full service restaurants, because people are going to be okay with the tech, but once in a while they're going to be like, man, I just want a human.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Cool. Well, look, as we wrap up, I always like to end off with kind of like what's next for you, what's next for LDEI. So, and then just any plugs. So I know you plug the website, but once again, feel free. We can plug the website where people could find you. And then just kind of like what's next for either you, LDEI, Joey's, all three, whatever makes sense.
Well, I think Joey speaks for itself. It is ever expanding. We've got new restaurants opening up. I think we have a couple opening up in the next couple of years. So nice. We're moving fast and furious.
Yeah.
I think most important to my heart right now is LDEI, cool. Obviously as the president.
Yeah.
I am excited to to meet you and to be able to share the story of LDEI, because I do think it is, and it's important. It's close to my heart.
Yeah.
I think women still need to know that they do belong in this industry, even in the kitchen, and that it's important that we represent as well. And I do think, back to our original conversation, talking about, support teams, women tend to take everything on themselves. There is this sort of internal expectation that they have to do it all. They can have help, they can have assistance, they can ask questions.
Yeah.
And it's important to be together. I think we lift each other up when we're together, and we do thrive off of each other's energy. So
love that.
Love to get the name out there. Yeah. Love to see more women involved, and also applying for scholarships. If you're at that stage where you're looking to even change your career and get into the industry.
I love that. So for people listening in, like, we're going to put this in the podcast notes, whether you're listening on Spotify or on Apple or watching this on YouTube, like we'll put the links, but definitely just as a reminder, LDEI.org, and check it out. Like we said, chapters all over the world from what I'm seeing on the website. So check it out, see how you can join. But I love that we have a lot of restaurateur listeners. I don't even know what the breakdown is, male or female, but I imagine there's got to be a decent percentage that are women. So for all those women out there listening, feel free to check out LDEI.org. And Stephanie, thanks again for joining us, for sharing your passion. We really appreciate having you on the Whisking It All podcast.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.